Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather daily to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today, with us, Dan Blanchard, a best selling and award winning author, speaker, and educator, is going to be having a great conversation with Judith Dreyer. Judith is a podcast host, author, speaker, master gardener, and holistic health educator. But before starting with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness in the planet, and you can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment on this video, or sharing it with someone that you know that can benefit of the content that we're going to be talking here today. Also, while live streaming, we have an active chat screen you're going to be seeing here on my side or under the video if you're following us from a smartphone, and through there you can interact with us if you want to. We also want you to collaborate with Mindalia with your own valuable content. For that, you can go to our website. On the top, there's going to be a link that you can click, and that's going to take you to our website where there's going to be a form for you to fill out, and our technical team can contact you. You can collaborate with Mindalia in English, but you can also do it in Spanish through Mindalia Televisión and Portuguese through Mindalia Televisão. Visit our different channels and platforms. Follow, like, subscribe, Facebook pages, Instagram accounts. When you do that, you are not only helping us reach as much people in the planet as possible, but you also keep yourself updated with the amazing information that we have there on a daily basis. I'm not going to be delaying this any further with this long introduction. I have now the great pleasure of introducing and leaving the screen to Dan Blanchard and Judith Dreyer. Guys, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. How are you?
Wonderful, Myrna. Great to be on the show again with you.
Oh, yes, this is a delight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Judith, it's a pleasure to see you again. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Dan?
Wonderful. So for all you out there, Judith is my author, blogger, and podcaster buddy. Judith does so many things. Right? A lot of holistic health stuff. She's got her book and her blog is At the Garden Gate, which I've read her book and been on her blog. It's very, very interesting for the people out there. The podcast, Holistic Nature in Us, which is important, very important. And I can't wait, Judith, to share that with us. Also, a few other things for our audience that Judith does is that she's a speaker. She's an online instructor about dream navigation. She's got degrees in nursing science. She's a university teacher for holistic health and nutrition science. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And I think if we all make you our best friend, Judith, we're going to live forever. So I'm looking forward. I know Mira and our audience looking forward to what you have to say today. And I know I just throw a whole bunch of stuff at you, but perhaps you could bring it together a little better than I did and kind of let our audience know who you are and a little bit about you.
Thank you, Dan. Well, thank you, Mira, too. I'm really delighted to be here. I love your message of raising consciousness because that's what I'm all about and Dan's all about. So it's a pleasure to collaborate with the both of you. What I like to tell folks is that we're a tapestry in making, right? Nothing happens or finishes, in one day. We're a process, and I love to use the analogy of a tapestry. So for me, the warp threads are the threads that are strong. They create the foundation for the tapestry, and for me, that's the sciences. I have a nursing degree, and I have a degree in biochemistry and nutrition on a master's level. And then the weft threads are those threads that add a lot of color. They give form and texture. They build the pattern of the tapestry. And that can be tedious work. We know historically that some of our tapestry took years and years and years for the local villages to create. And that's something about us. I like to relate that to us as our human journey together. So the weft threads for me are my passions. What is it that I've really loved doing? I've studied and continue to do yoga and meditation. I've studied Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Native American healing practices. My passions are wild edibles, and of course, the Native American culture allowed me to step into understanding herbalism, not from a place of fear, but from a place of knowledge and understanding, and how to apply that in everyday life. So I ended up raising my family on herbal medicine. And then my other passion, of course, is dreams. I've been a dreamer all my life. I've decided to write my next book on dreams. I've created a book called Into the Land of Dreams about dream navigation, how we can learn about our dreaming time so that we can apply the messages in everyday life and really have a very fulfilling life on a different level if we understand that we're more complex than what we appear or what we've been taught in our Western culture. Dreams to me has been a totally untapped in our culture, except if you step in Native American culture, if you step in Ayurvedic cultures, they have an intuitive knowing and they also understand
Mm.
or appreciate dreams. But in Western culture, we do not. Everything has to be scientific and proven with a double blind clinical study. And
Yep.
that's not how we are. So, last but not least, all of these things have led me to write my first book, At the Garden's Gate. I have a blog and a website, but it's also led me to be a podcast host, to try to take all these threads and put them together in a way that I hope, like you, Mira, and Dan, for your work, is inspiring on some level, that there's some really great things happening out there, but we're not easily able to find it. So you have something like the Biomimicry Institute, for example. They are
Mhm.
creating challenges around the world for all ages, middle school, high school, and adults, where you have to pick a problem with climate change and you have to use something in nature to solve that problem. And what they're coming up with, what the kids come up with, is absolutely fascinating. So, for example, an adult team looked at the shark skin of a particular shark. That shark skin does not have any bacteria on it. And with our technology today, they've been able to create a material that mimics that. And hopefully, it'll be put into our hospitals and care centers, and it'll be free of bacteria. Isn't that amazing?
Wow, that's mind blowing.
It is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And nature has a lot more answers
Yeah.
than we realize. And that's
Mm.
because we have not respected nature in its fullness.
Yes, so agree with you. And this conversation tonight can go off in so many different directions, Judith. But I think I'm going to start it off with a little bit like you were talking about double blind studies and all that stuff, the Western way. I agree with you. There's a whole intuitive sort of feeling and like a nature therapy that maybe you people can't fully explain or fully understand, but it doesn't mean it's not there and it's not true. So, for instance, I'm an educator. I'm a teacher in the inner city, and Judith, you're an educator. You speak in front of a lot of people. But I got to tell you, every summer I get out in the yard. I've got this huge yard. Every summer, I can't wait to get out in that yard. And if I have a busy day over my summer break, if I got a busy day, I'm like throwing on my boots and I'm telling my wife, just give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes in the yard, and then I'll be right in and I'll take a 5-minute shower and then we'll go meet your mom or whatever it is that we got to do. So I'm out there like almost every day in the summer. For me, it's almost like a little nature therapy or something. And I think I intuitively knew that I had to balance the craziness that I deal with every single day as an inner city school teacher for those 10 months a year. And then over those 2 months of the summer, I needed something to make me whole, to make me well, to balance me. I needed something. And for me, I found my yard. You know what I'm saying, Judith?
Mhm.
You with
Yes,
me
I
on that?
do
You know what
know.
I'm saying?
I do know. There's actually, just getting back to the science a little bit, there's actually a name for a property in soil called geosmin. And that actually, when we work in the dirt and we work in our yard, we actually get it on our skin, we get it in our eyes, we get it in our
Yeah,
nose, we
I
probably
get
even put it
filthy.
in our mouth. We don't realize it, but that will actually affect our serotonin levels and it creates a feeling of peacefulness and calmness.
Really?
So, yeah, it does. And
Judith, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me
yeah,
ask you something. Can you put the microphone a little bit lower, like on the line of your jaw, like right here, right with your chin?
this is as
So
far as I can
so
get it.
so you don't blow
Oh,
and we
okay.
don't hear the air.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
So
Continue.
you're telling me I intuitively knew my serotonin was going to go up, but I just
Ye
didn't know it?
yes.
Like
Yes.
then, like you could get more energy from anywhere.
That's true, Dan. You could. But I'm glad to see that you figured that out because you deal with some tough issues. No mistake. And you also deal with a commute. And when you get home and can work in the yard, even if it's for 20 minutes, the ground actually absorbs some of that. And it helps you stay more centered and balanced. And think about
Yeah,
it. What happens when we go outside on these beautiful days we're having where we have fresh, clear air? We all feel different.
yeah,
We feel like,
no doubt.
we're away from the rain.
Yeah,
We've had here in the Northeast, we've had so much rain and we've
yeah,
had so many cloudy days that it does affect us.
yeah, no doubt. But I'm thinking at no point in my life did I say, well, I need to work in the yard because of A, B, C.
Right.
I could never really explain it.
Hmm.
I just felt it that I had to be out there. And my most recent one is I had this huge tree that came down, and it was too big for me to do a whole lot with it, especially the big part of the trunk. I got rid of, I moved out the smaller parts, but the big trunk. I'm like, what am I going to do with that? I could call somebody and maybe chop it up, take it away, all that stuff. Because it's really big, it's huge, right? So
Hmm.
I'm like, why don't I make a flower bed out of it?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what
Why
I've been
not?
doing. And I feel really good about it.
Well,
Like one life ended and I'm creating a new life out of that tree that fell. I'm creating a new life from one life that ended.
Wow, that's beautiful. You
it,
know what I feel and or what I've been thinking, sorry to interrupt you, how it's like an instinct with children. When we are younger, we love dirt. We love, putting our hands in mud until people like, grown-ups start telling us, don't get yourself dirty, you're gonna mess up your clothes. And then
Mm.
like we get the idea of, nature is a contamination and it's pollution, and when it's actually the opposite.
Yes, and we have to be practical about that too. When I have a fresh rain, I don't often water some of my plants because I know the rain has done a good job with it. And I look for bugs and I look to make sure that they're in good condition, but then I eat them. And a little bit of if there's any speck of dirt on there that I can't see, for the most part, I know it's not going to hurt me. But again, you have to use your common sense with what you're planting, what you're digging out in your yard. And Dan, to get back to you, that tree may have lost most of its body, but the part that's in the ground is actually still functioning. It's still a
Yeah,
part of the network of the forest ecosystem that might be connected to your property. And that's
yeah,
the piece that we're just starting to put together. Some of it is with the science so that people believe it,
yeah.
but there's actually a whole fungal network that connects all the roots together. They communicate, they trade for goods, they manufacture products. I mean, it's an incredible world that's underneath our feet
Oh my
that
God.
we take for granted.
That is
That's
wild.
naturally there. Yeah, it is wild.
I was
And
one of my questions I was going to ask you tonight was how do trees communicate? Because I know you've talked about that before. So you're saying that through the roots?
Well, yes, there's a fungal network, the mycorrhizal hypha, to be scientific about it, is a fungal network that actually connects the root systems together. And if you have a forest with a lot of beech trees and chestnut trees or maybe maple trees, whatever, the mother tree actually keeps an eye on the babies. And if there are some problems going on with the babies, she will share nutrients with them. Also, if a tree
Wow.
is being hit by a pest, it will alert the other trees in the area and they'll automatically start producing chemicals in their structure so that the bugs will be repelled by them, and that's how they start working together. And what's interesting to note about that is when we have irresponsible logging, for example, they
Hmm.
take down the mother and the grandmother trees of that forested area, and it really destroys the ecosystem. deeply.
It's
So
their own family unit, right?
it's a community. It's an
Yeah.
ecosystem community that's part of nature, and they've had a lot more time to figure things out than we have as a species. You have to remember
Hmm.
nature's been around for I don't know what the latest figure is, but I'm going to say for billions of years, right?
Yep.
How long has the human species been recorded on this planet? Not that long.
No.
So nature has done all the R&D, the research and development. And how come we're not looking to nature for their research and development for solving problems? They wouldn't be here
Wow.
this long if they
Yeah.
hadn't worked in that way. The
Good
hard
point.
part for people is that the language is different. We have
Hmm.
to tap into our intuitive nature to communicate with them. And that's something that Western world doesn't easily acknowledge.
Wow, that's amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. Like they know more than we do. There's no doubt about it. But yet we think we know it all.
And look what we've done.
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. Look what we've done to this planet. We've lost one third of our topsoil in just a short, little over 100 years. We have at least 250 major bugs on the endangered list. We've got 4,500 species that we're in danger of losing. We've raped the rainforest for the sake of 5 products. People don't realize with the fast food industry, there's only about 5 or 6 products. There's the meat, there's the grain for the bun, there's the tomato, there's the lettuce, and there's the potato. That's what, 5 or 6 ingredients. So they go into the rainforest, these companies, and they only put in 5 crops. Meanwhile, they've destroyed hundreds and thousands of species, not to mention the ecosystem that's there with a specific function. And that's what
Wow.
makes me sad. And that's why I'm trying to connect the dots for folks in my podcast show called The Holistic Nature of Us. It's of us, Dan, not in us. Holistic
Oh,
Nature of Us.
thank you.
Yep.
I can't, as a history teacher, I can't help but my mind wander back to the Native Americans saying you don't own the land. But
Mm.
the Europeans came in and said, we own the land. You take the land, you improve upon it. The Native Americans were like, there's nothing to improve upon. It's perfect the way it is. But we had the Europeans had their own ideas of what it meant to improve upon the land and what land ownership was. That's the history teacher in me coming out. And I'm thinking, some people called that progress, but it might have been a slow destruction
Well,
instead.
actually, I don't think it was a slow destruction. We've annihilated a culture. We've taken land for the mineral rights without understanding or even working with nature, if that's what we should be doing. When I did my master's, I researched cottonseed because cottonseed oil is a byproduct of the cotton industry. So now there's a couple of problems. The first thing is it's grown as a textile crop. The
Yep.
byproduct is cottonseed oil. Cottonseed oil is in our crackers and cookies and in our food industry. But yet
Yep.
the cotton is grown with pesticides that would never be allowed to be used on a food crop. But yet we take the byproduct from the seed and we make an oil out of it for the food industry. So when I was doing my research and I was calling various centers around the country, I talked to somebody from the USDA down in Louisiana. Interestingly enough, the man was from China. And he and I could talk the same language based on the plants. And you know what he said to me? Did
What?
anybody ever ask the plant?
Nope.
And that's what we're not taught in our culture. And to me, that's the beauty of part of my heritage is Native American. And I love the fact that I've learned more and more and more about being deeply involved with nature. It doesn't matter whether it's a pot on your patio. We all walk outside, we see the clouds, we see the wind, we
Yep.
feel the wind, we drink water. Water is so precious, and we think nothing of polluting it. And yet it's such a limited resource on this planet. And that's that, again, that's what bothers me, and I want to be part of the solution.
Well, I'm
Judith,
glad we got people like you around, Judith.
what are the chances according to your studies? Because I completely agree with what you're saying, and I'm always terrified about the speed in which we have been destroying everything we touch.
Mhm.
With the proper resources, with the proper education, do you think there is a way for us to revert the damage that has been done so far?
Well, there is, but the question is whether we will take up the clarion call, so to speak. So, for example, Doug Tallamy wrote Bringing Nature Home. He's the one that brings out to the forefront one of the folks out there that says we've lost topsoil at a tremendous rate. Topsoil is our lifeblood. If everybody who had a yard took care of putting in plants that absorb water, that get rid of some of your lawn so that it doesn't run off into storm drains. Do something simple like that. Change your front yard, change your backyard, add in a few more feet of wild plants, anything on that nature that's more native. We could make a difference. And he said, we can use our front yards and our backyards. And there's not enough public state forested lands to make a difference. But if we
Mhm.
add that into the total number of backyards from residential use, if people would make one change, we could make a difference. And
Now,
if
Judith, can you explain that a little bit more? Because I've read your books, I know exactly what you're talking about, but the common person in our audience may not understand. I mean, we typically mow our grass, keep it nice, short, nice, green looking, and we think we're doing the right thing. But you're saying no, there's something else about the natural,
Well, let
natural.
me tell you this. First of all, most grasses are not native to the United States. That's number one. Number two, if you look at the history of grass, back in King Louis, I think the 14th, back in France, it was a sign of royalty to have grass. But you have to remember, they had groundskeepers, they had sheep, they had goats to manage and manicure everything, or to keep it under control. And grass supports Japanese beetles. And the figure that I heard is that we have like 40,000 acres or 40 million acres of grass, and that supports Japanese beetles. So we're not really supporting other wildlife with that particular species. And it requires something like, millions of pounds of pesticides and lawn chemicals, and it requires us millions of pounds of synthetic fertilizers to maintain that lawn. That doesn't even include the gas for every lawnmower that pollutes the environment. So you're talking about a very complex issue. And if we could just rethink lawn and start adding more wild plantings somewhere in our landscapes, and that could be even on a third of an acre versus 3,000 acres, we could make a difference. Our neighborhoods have become sterile. Some of the developed neighborhoods are sterile. They're all grass, just a couple of trees, very predictable landscaping. They do not support our wildlife. If we lose our bugs, everything up the food chain goes and suffers.
That's scary.
It is, and that's where education comes in.
Yep.
So we're
But I
all
got to tell
doing
you,
our part.
I showed your book to multiple people. I showed them the pictures of the natural, like grass, natural yard, like 2, 3 feet high, the natural. And some people said, I ain't doing that. They're like, that doesn't look as good as grass. I
Mhm.
mean, how do we change people's minds?
Well, that's the hard part because in the native tradition, things can take 7 generations. They take time to make a change in a broad sense. So the only thing we can do is we can be the voice in a personal sense, and we can walk our talk, and we can live our truth, and we can pass the word out however we're guided. You and I happen to be educators. We both love doing the speaking. I will speak and travel over the country if I
Mhm.
have to get this word across.
Share your message.
Yep, share the
No,
message.
you've got so much to offer here, Judith. We can, again, like I said, we can go in so many different directions. But if you don't mind, I'd like to backtrack a little bit. Me and Myrna recently did a show on how there seems to be almost be a crisis with like depression and the other things that go along with that. And you had talked about when I go out in the yard without even knowing it, my serotonin level is rising because I'm getting my fingers dirty and digging in the dirt and all that stuff. And I think back about what video games has done to our kids. It's put our kids inside the house. In the old days, it was like, hey, if you misbehave, I'm going to send you to your room. Now it's like, if you misbehave, I'm going to put you outside. Because the kids, like, they don't want to go outside. They just want to be in the bedrooms with their little video games, getting carpal tunnel in their thumbs. You know what I'm saying? But they're missing out on an endorphin rising opportunity that I'm getting every day I'm out in the yard.
Right,
Um,
and I would love to see education bring the kids out more.
yeah, no doubt. So I think, I mean, I'm sure video games didn't do that on purpose. It was all about making money, but it's a big problem that our kids are stuck behind video games in their dark bedrooms instead of being outside.
Well, all I can say is we are responsible for our own actions, and that's the message I like to give children. If you choose to spend 3 hours in your room, that's a choice, and that's a choice for us as parents as well as we
Mhm.
raise our kids. But I want to tell you just a quick story, and
Yeah,
that
me
has
too.
to do with one of my guests, Craig Floyd, here in Mystic, Connecticut. He has a beautiful giving garden. He calls it the Giving Garden, 11,000 square feet. He gets hundreds of volunteers that help every day, including corporations, whatever. Everything in there is organic, no till, no spray, and he gives every bit of food to the New London County food banks here in Connecticut. It's an
Very
amazing,
cool.
amazing garden. But
Yeah.
he had a group of kids come out with their counselors. It was one counselor to two kids. They all had deeply troubled emotional issues, including anger. In a very short time, he had the counselors step away from the kids and let the kids go in the garden. Today, these kids can come in without their counselors. And
Wow.
they have maybe one counselor with 7 or 8 of them when they come to visit the garden. And he said it's the soil. It's the soil. They're breathing in what the soil and nature has to offer us. The plants. The plants help in so many ways. We know the plants
Mhm.
can give a vibration out there. So we're all connected. We've just forgotten that we're all connected.
I so agree with you. And I feel that we're so naive and so ignorant on so many things in this world. And again, I mean, we could sit here and just talk about this stuff forever. But taking a turn here. So, Judith, maybe you can share a little something. I know you talked about being an herbalist and all that. Maybe you can share a little bit. I mean, how do we get healthier? Like, I've been suffering from these allergies forever. Can't seem to get rid of them. They're like, oh, you're taking Sudafed, you take this. I've tried a whole bunch of different allergy medicines. Nothing seems to. I've gotten the shots. Nothing seems to work. Mirna, I know you're pretty close to perfect, but I don't know. Maybe you got some allergies or something that's bothering you. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
I do. I have a couple of issues, so I'm not going to deny that. But um, again, we're lucky here in Connecticut that naturopathic physicians are licensed physicians and they're allowed to practice medicine here. And if your insurance covers it, I highly recommend that you go see them. Over time, they can turn your system around. Obviously, if we can diminish any processed food from our diet, any sodas from our diet, if we clean it up, fresh water, if we can. I have tons of lemon balm. I make lemon balm tea every other day and I put it over ice and it's delicious. But lemon balm happens to help our digestive tract and our liver. It cools things
Mm,
down. And so it's a very good plant to make a tea out of. So it's the simple things that work, but they work over time. And you have to remember something, Dan. Our environment is polluted. We're
mm,
polluted from the EMFs, from all our technology. We're polluted with from the fluorescent lighting, and we
yep.
get pollution in commuting traffic. And so we have to maybe do some grounding, go outside and lay on the ground for a half an hour every day.
Wow, I used to love doing that when I was a kid.
Yes, exactly. Kids know to do that. The first thing they want to do is roll around on the ground. They know they want to go
Yeah.
barefoot on the ground. So, if at the
Yeah.
very least, walk around your yard for a half an hour barefoot if you can't lay on the ground.
Wow. I mean, that is so cool. I used to love doing that. Wow. Mirna, do you do that? Do you walk barefoot?
Yes, I love being barefoot. I was in New England this weekend and we were hiking. I
New
removed my
England?
shoes. Yeah, and I took my shoes off. I'm like, it's like, you know what? This is gonna be way better if I took my sneakers off and I just walk. And in regards to allergies, I used to be deeply allergic. Like I was a asthmatic patient my whole life. My parents always took me to holistic medicine specialists. But in the end, when I got here for the first time, I saw what was the pollen allergy, and what was recommended was just to, eat a teaspoon of local honey.
Mhm. That's very good.
And
Yes,
it
local honey,
stopped.
raw local honey, just 1 teaspoon. And do you know what else it helps with? Mira, I don't know if you know this, but there's a great bee expert down in Virginia that I've had on my show, and he says if you eat a teaspoon, a half or 1 teaspoon a day in between meals, not in your tea, you can prevent osteoporosis.
Oh, wow.
And from Australia, they've done some mind research, and it actually helps the brain stay healthier if you take it at night before you go to bed.
And talking about, respecting nature, because I'm a big fan of honey. It can,
Mhm.
I always have honey, but respecting nature and leaving that human arrogance of just abusing everything. How do we control the type of honey that we eat? Because I do know that they even abuse bees with the production of honey. How do we know what honey can we trust that is not being, uh, abusive with the bees?
I would say get to know your local beekeeper.
Okay.
Because get to know your local beekeeper. Be very, very wary of some of the stuff in the supermarkets. We know that some stuff has come in contaminated from other countries, so you need to be really mindful. Get raw honey from a local source. Um, so again, there's a lot of farmers markets. It's a great place to chat up your local bee people and find out what they do and how big their production is and get a feel for the person. And I think again, because we're connected, when we get to know someone, we get to have a different level of trust with them, and then you become a more consistent uh, consumer for them and customer for them, and everybody wins. You get the better honey, you get to know your supplier, they get supported in the community, and then we're all supported health wise.
That's beautiful.
That's
In
great stuff.
in your knowledge, what I understand that at this point we have depleted the soils of nutrients. What is a way that we could do if we decide to have edible gardens, for example? Is there a way to help the soil regain the
Oh,
nutrition that we actually need to be properly fed?
there is. You have to understand two principles. When you do large scale farming, which we've typically done, we keep adding fertilizers to the soil because we plant one crop. And we know over time that that actually depletes the soil. And we also know that some of those products bind up the nutrients so they're not even in the food to begin with. And that's what we're facing today, which is why I think we see some serious health issues. So, what can you do for the soil? I don't know that we have enough time. There's some great things you can do to build up your soil. One thing I've learned this year is I go down to the shore and I collect seaweed. And I've been adding seaweed to my compost, and I add seeding. I just put seaweed around some tender plants today. It helps prevent slugs, and some of the bugs don't like it, but it also breaks down and adds nutrients to the soil. And
Cool.
then I've learned how to make compost tea with some of the common weeds in my yard. I can make a delicious tea from my garden, and I feed them that. I did that this morning, and it
Yeah.
goes on from there. And I have compost piles. So not everybody can do that, and they can't do that easily. So I say to them, get to know your local farmers. Not everybody at a farmer's market farms organically. Get to know your organic farmers, and if you can't do it yourself, support them.
Wow. You are so cool, Judith.
I love doing
Jeez.
this, as you can tell. uh,
Yeah. So I'm thinking, Judith, maybe you can share with me and Mirna and the Mindalia audience just some very simple first steps to living a healthier, happier life.
well, I think the first thing is to respect your breath. If we look at the four elements on the planet, start there. If we breathe, we have life. Then give thanks for that life. Giving gratitude, we know, changes our biochemistry, it changes our brain chemistry, changes our heart chemistry. So
Yep.
breathe and give thanks. Also, in what I've learned from some of the native elders is that the water is really precious, and there's women today who are walking for the water in Canada, walked from Canada all the way down to Louisiana to pray for the water, which is seriously suffering. So I highly recommend that people go look up the Algonquin water song on YouTube, and it's a very sweet, simple song. But for the women in your family, have them learn the song and be grateful. The water's in us as well as in the land, and to
Mhm.
be grateful for that water. And last but not least, get out on the ground. So there's your earth, air, fire, and water.
Cool. Awesome advice, Judith. Thank you.
You're
Mirna,
welcome.
do you have any other questions?
Well, actually, not really, no questions. I think I could stay here and talk with you guys forever. But well, actually, I did, and it was to you then. We do know that this abuse that we've been doing to animals, to nature, to water, to soil, to absolutely everything, is to fulfill a need of having. We want more. We don't. We
Mm.
only need shelter, but we want a 7 bedroom house for two people.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
you being a history teacher, what do you think? What happened? At what point we became and we switched from the need of just fulfilling our basic needs to the need of being absolutely greedy and abusive? Is there a point in
Phew.
nature that or in history that you could focus and say, okay, this is what happens?
That's a good question. And I
Probably
would
we won't be
say, and
able to
I might be
answer it.
wrong, but I'm going to throw this out there real quick. In the 1950s, people lived in a 900 foot, 1,000 foot square home, and it was enough. They had a bank account, they paid for things in cash. They didn't really buy it. I mean, credit cards weren't really there yet. They were their genesis. Was the credit cards in the 1950s, some of the layaway stuff like that, so you can get a washing machine, dishwasher, whatever. But all in all, the 1950s and even 1940s, but we can go as recent as the 50s. It was like if you had the basics, you had enough. You know what I'm saying? And then in the 1960s, we had all that turmoil. And then in the 1970s, something happened. The houses started getting bigger. The gap, it was right when the internet was born and right when I was born. All right, 1970, right? I was born in very, very end of 69. So was the internet. So I was born, me and the internet have the same birthday. But that was the moment, 69, 70, when there started becoming a gap between like the haves and have-nots, the rich and poor. And that gap has been growing ever since 1970. So now a 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot house is not enough. You know what I'm saying? You got to have a 5,000 square foot house. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we didn't have to have that back in the 50s and 60s. But like I said, 1970 came along and there was just something different in 1970. And that gap has been growing for the last 49 years. That gap has been growing since 1979 between like the haves and have-nots. And it was like everybody had to have more. You had to have more. You couldn't just settle with it being enough. So I don't know if that's the right answer or the best answer, but that's the one that popped in my head real quick. Was in the 1950s, you had a small house and that was okay. You didn't need a big house. You didn't need credit cards. You didn't have to have, a fancy car that's gonna cost you $70,000 and take you 20 years to pay off. You know what I'm saying? You didn't do that. in the 1950s. So there might be a better answer, but I guess off the cuff.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a bad answer to that. It's just the way we see it, and I agree with you. And Judith, according to your studies, what can we do to fill those voids in our hearts that make us wanting more material things and reconnecting to our source? That may, in my case, that what happened. The more I'm connected with myself, the more I am fulfilled with who I am, the least I need things. I realize I don't need 20 pairs of shoes. I have three or four, and I'm super happy with them.
Mhm.
What can we do to go back to that being happy with who I am, so I don't need to fool myself thinking that buying I will be happier?
Well, I think you raise a good point. From a symbolic level, when we keep buying and buying and buying, I think we're trying to fill a hole within ourselves that we haven't acknowledged yet, and we haven't been taught how to acknowledge that. So again, it's back to balance. What does it mean to be balanced? And it's not that some of the stuff is bad, and that's not the issue. The issue is our inner perspective of it, and what do I need to be fulfilled? And if we can really be honest and look at ourselves on a deeper level, I think we get the answers, and we feel more centered and grounded and more at peace, and realize that the stuff doesn't bring us that. What brings us peace and serenity is our own perspective in the world. And so I know of some people who really had to fill a hole by shopping, and they were not happy. They would beg and get this and this, and then as soon as they have it, then they're on to the next thing. And so I think that's a symptom of our society. And with the dream work that I do, there's archetypes, there's patterns, and I think our society, and other people have said this, is that we're addicted. We're addicted to all the self-indulgent things we can possibly have, and our technology supports that. So the media is constantly in our face about buying, getting, having, and unless we turn it off, we're going to be influenced by that. And I think we
And get
are
outside.
influenced by that.
Right,
Huh?
Judith? Turn it off and get outside.
Exactly, exactly. It's so much more interesting outside in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
ways.
Hey, Judith, in closing, I got one interesting question I want to ask you. I know you said something before. I read somewhere in one of your readings or something about plants help us with physical therapy. Can you talk about that a little bit in closing?
Yes, yes. I did some research recently for my blog on horticultural therapy. And somebody was telling me a story. Again, one of my guests was telling me a story that in a nursing home, they had this ficus plant, and a woman was in a wheelchair. And they noticed that she'd go there and she'd spend her time, a good hour, pulling off the leaves of the ficus. Now, obviously, the ficus eventually died, but the staff replaced it with another ficus just for her.
Mm,
And if digging in a garden or planting plants for the home that you live in, or the senior center that you're involved in, anything that gets us working with the plants in some way becomes exercise. You got to lift a bag of potting soil, you got to bend over,
mm,
you got to get on your knees to dig out some weeds, or to water the plants every day. And the folks that work with horticultural therapy notice a lot of changes, including the fact that it brings back memories. Certain plants evoke memories of family members, and it brings a different feeling of peace to folks in that way as well. But it's
mm.
physical to work with them, and that's where the comment comes in about physical therapy. Make gardening your physical therapy.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
No
Hi.
doubt.
Thank you. Where can our audience find you, Judith?
Well, I have a website. It's www.judithdreyer.com, and the Dreyer is Dreyer.com. I have a book, At the Garden's Gate. It's found on several distribution arms, including Amazon, Goodreads, Nook, Kobo, and more. I think Google as well. And I on my website, you can book me for speaking engagements. I have an online dream class posted up there, and consults. So that's the best way to get me.
Thank you. Mr. B, where can our audience find you?
All right. They can go danblanchard.net, granddaddysecrets.com, or just Google Dan Blanchard. Go on social media. I'm on all of them. Check me out on Amazon, The Storm, a whole bunch of others. They'll find me, no problem, Yona.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation. Thank you for allowing the Mindalia cameras to be a channel for your ideas, for taking time to be with us. To our audience, of course, thank you for being with us, for liking, for subscribing. Remember, subscribe and like not only this channel, but also Mindalia Televisión and Mindalia Televisao. We share content on English here, but we also do it in Portuguese and in Spanish. We are sending you a very big hug, and until next time, bye bye.